Michael Kaskey-Blomain, 97.3 ESPN.com at The Real MKB. What's happening, pal?
What's going on, Mike? How are you?
I'm doing well. Last night, you want to pull your hair out a little bit. Some of these nights, right when you think they're turning the corner. It's funny, a team that wins 7 straight, somehow, we find ways to criticize from times, and like those 7-game win streaks kind of get thrown out the window. But that was a game last night that you probably felt you should have had, could have had. Make or miss league, Heat made, Sixers missed, but frustrating loss last night.
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. It was definitely a frustrating loss, especially considering the implications. You get that win, you put 3 games of separation in between, the Sixers and the Heat and the standings, in between the 7 and the 8 seed, and you lock up the tiebreaker, on the season with the Heat in case you end up tied with them for the 8 seed or whatever it may be. So, it would have been certainly nice to come away with that game. I think that was one of those times where the team reminded us that they're, still an extremely young team, still prone to make young team mistakes. Obviously you could point to JJ's missed 3 at the end, but there was a few turnovers, some missed defensive plays, and just a vintage performance, a throwback game from Dwayne Wade, all added up to definitely a tough loss.
Yeah, I can't criticize the last look. They get a great look with one of the best three-point shooters of the generation, and he missed one straight on. So I don't criticize the look or anything, but it's another game where they have a lead and they squander it. And I guess you look to the bench, which happens to go to the move they made today where they bring in Ersan, they bring him back. Booker's the odd man out. Was Booker the guy that you would have cut ties with?
Ideally, I think myself included, a lot of people would have liked to see Jared Bayless be the guy, but, contractually, he's on the books for a lot more for, next season as well. Well, Booker's coming off the books this year. And the just redundancy of the position, you got Booker as a guy that plays, mostly the power forward position, whereas Bayless is a guard, and Ilyasova is going to come over and play a lot of those, take those power forward minutes that Booker would be playing. So, it makes sense, basically, that he would be the guy to go.
Booker. What about Amir Johnson? A lot of people have asked me about him. I brought him up myself, using Ersan as the 4, sliding Booker into the 5 minutes, and having Booker and Holmes. I know a lot of people probably ask me the same thing. Why are they so enamored with Amir Johnson? What's the deal there? Would you have rather seen Booker or Amir?
They like Amir a lot, Mike. Just from a team perspective, it's one of those that, it's kind of an overused, obviously, a saying, but they really like what he brings to the team as far as his experience, his he's well liked with all the teammates. He's a guy that kind of is a level head. He's been through a lot in the league. He's seen a lot of things, a lot of that the other guys haven't. So between him and JJ, the 2 guys that they, paid a good amount of money for last offseason to bring in specifically for that, the purpose of being able to, help the team both on and off the floor. It's, JJ obviously can contribute a little bit more on the floor than Amir can, but I think, he's signed for this year for $11 million, and I just, I don't think the team is going to really look to make a move on him. I think they want him as the kind of a stabilizing voice in the locker room, especially as it heads down toward a playoff stretch where, a lot of these guys don't have any experience with the playoffs. Amir does. I think he's just a guy that they want to keep around.
Michael Kaskey-Blomain is with us here. The Sixers lose. Booker released. He's going to sign with the Pacers, it looks like. We know Ersan's been here before, so he knows the system, but how does he fit in with this roster as opposed to the one they played with last year where he was more of a starter last year, got more minutes? How does he fit in coming off the bench and with what they currently have off the bench?
Yeah, actually, I think it'll fit pretty well, Mike. He's obviously very familiar with the coach and the system, having just played here last year. It's kind of going to be like a reversal of roles, like you said. He started a lot of the time last year where Dario came in off the bench. For him, it's going to be kind of an opposite position. But, it's really for him, his role is going to be just to space the floor, basically do what he did last year, just do it in a more of a deuce role with the second unit. As far as replacing Booker, it was really just a matter of offense. Booker doesn't really bring much to the offensive end. He's not a floor spacer. He'll give you, a couple putbacks, offensive rebounds, maybe a jump shot, but in Ilyasova, it's a guy that, could get hot from the outside and give you maybe, 10, 12, up to 15 points on a given night. And is just another guy to space the floor that if they, they want to play him next to Embiid, he has experience doing that and he could do it. So I think he's just a guy that's a veteran. He knows what's expected of him. And I think he'll slide pretty seamlessly into that, that backup power forward role. It'll be interesting, obviously, to see how the minutes kind of break down between him, Amir, and Ersan in the backcourt behind, obviously, Joel and Dario. But I don't think, I think that bringing him in is his familiarity with the team and the system is definitely part of the reasoning behind that.
MKB on the Boardwalk Honda hotline. If you have a Sixers question for Michael, send a text 609-403-0973. Your take, Mike, on the Covington situation. He signs the deal. The thing with him is, I'm not a Covington hater by any stretch, but they don't really have another guy that plays his position or does what he does. But when he's struggling like this, is there a lot of people said, do you sit him down? Who takes his minutes? I mean, when he's struggling along, what do you do in that spot?
They are kind of not necessarily stuck, but at this point, with the roster as it is, he is, as you said, they really don't have anyone else that does that as far as what he brings to the floor as a 3-and-D player. And Brett, he always emphasizes it even when Robert's struggling. They love what he brings to the floor in terms of defense and rebounding. The question really, I think, will be moving forward. I think that's a position that the team might be, targeting in free agency. Obviously, there's, the LeBron rumors, Paul George, but a wing player. And in that situation, is Robert a guy that you'd look to as a long-term starter? And you'd say probably not. But, as it stands for this season, I think, the team has confidence in him and what he brings to the floor regardless of, his shooting. Obviously, we'd all like to see a little bit more consistency from him. It's definitely been a struggle from him as of late. And you can tell kind of he seems to, more so than some other players, get, kind of in his own head. You can tell there's, his confidence is lacking when he's not necessarily knocking down his shots, or he kind of gets a big boost when he does hit a few shots in a row. So, if he could just get the consistency down to match the production that he brings, on the glass and on the defensive end, that would obviously be ideal. Once you bring in, Bellinelli and Ilyasova could, potentially take a little bit of the load off of Covington's hands as far as the minutes that he plays as a floor spacer and a wing player for the team. But, overall, this team, at least this season, the way it's built, it needs Robert Covington and, it needs him to play big minutes and produce. And if he can't do that, that'll definitely be an issue that'll be difficult for them to overcome.
Well, that's an interesting point with Ilyasova, Bellinelli. When you have a guy like Simmons who's so versatile and big, as your point, you can move him around defensively. You can kind of go with a smaller guy in the Covington spot with Bellinelli, or a guy that maybe doesn't defend as well with Ilyasova, because Simmons, can change around and defend so many different guys. So I guess adding Ilyasova and having Bellinelli, maybe some of those minutes get cut into.
Yeah, both of those guys, I think, increase your versatility. The Sixers really play. The three wing positions, the way I look at it, most of the time they're interchangeable. You got Simmons at the point, you got probably Embiid or a big guy in the middle, and then you got three guys that switch on a lot of screens. They play similar roles on offense as far as screeners or poppers. Like the exact position numbers for the wing players on the Sixers, I don't think is necessarily as important. And in that situation, Bellinelli has played a two guard throughout his career, but he could certainly shift over, and play a three on the team, or Ilyasova could bump down from a three to fill some of those minutes. But, overall, I think, you need Robert Covington to play, 30-plus minutes a game and be productive. And if he's not, that's, it's going to be a problem for this team.
Michael, the LeBron stuff won't go away. Billboards, school visits, you name it. His name is tied. Do you think Philly is legitimate as a landing spot for LeBron?
Yeah, I do, Mike. Obviously, I don't think anyone knows, maybe not even LeBron himself knows what he's thinking as far as this offseason or what exactly he would be looking for. But, there's a short list of teams where it's even feasible, financially, that he would even, be able to go there as a free agent and get the type of money that, he would be deserving of and expecting on the market. and then an even shorter list of teams that could, boast the talent and the youth and the potential that the Sixers have. So while I'm not saying that they're a favorite by any means, the fact that they are, consistently being brought up, I thought his reaction to the billboards was, a little bit interesting. Usually that seemed like something that I would have expected him to almost just shoot down immediately or almost not acknowledge the fact that he went on to say that he thought that it was, flattering and cool and dope for the Sixers to have those, well, not the Sixers, but for those billboards. I thought that was the first time that I was a little bit intrigued. But, I think the team certainly has as good pretty much of a chance as any team. If I had to pick right now, I would guess that he still remains in Cleveland and doesn't leave this offseason. But if he does, I think the Sixers have as good a chance as anyone.
All right, Michael Kaskey-Blomain. Follow him on Twitter at @TheRealMikeKB. Sixers tomorrow night. Trying to get back on track, ironically, in Cleveland against the Cavs. They've lost 2 in a row. That's not an easy spot. We heard a lot, Mike, about the easy schedule, but it's got off to a rocky start here. I mean, that game down in Miami, they got the Heat coming up again. They got the Bucks. So they got a couple of teams that are kind of in the middle of things in the East. So that makes these games even more important. The loss to Washington hurt, and the loss last night hurt because those 2 games really changed the dynamics of where they are. If they win those 2, they're in contention for the 3 seed. Losing those 2 now keeps them back in the muck with everybody else.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, Mike. They were, both really tough losses, and then, like you said, there's another tough one tomorrow night against the Cavs that will have some, some impact on the playoff standings in the East as well too. Then you got, the Bucks and another game with the Heat coming up within the next, few games. So they have to start taking care of some of these, these games that really impact the standings. Like we were saying before, last night would have been a huge win to lock up, and instead they, the gap between them and the Heat now for the 8th seed is just 1 game. They're only half a game behind the Bucks. So this is one of those things that you're looking at that could potentially really go down to, the last few days of the regular season in terms of these bottom few teams fighting for positioning.
All right, he's the man, Michael Kaskey-Blomain at @TheRealMikeKB. All right, buddy, we'll see you soon.
Thanks, Mike.